Thank you for staying. Thank you for joining us for the news belt of the show. Let's start with some Fix the Country news. And campaigner Oliver Vomawo says he will file an official complaint with the Inspector General of Police over the breach of COVID protocols at the funeral of the late General Secretary of the New Patriotic Party, Kwejo Owusu-Efriye, popularly known as Sir John. President Akufo-Addo, Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, and the Chief Justice were all present when hundreds of people crammed into each other in what the Ghana Medical Association described as a super spreader event. The latest executive instrument enacted by the president bans such funerals. Oliver Vomawo says he will sue the Attorney General if no one is prosecuted.
We are going to go ahead with a complaint, a formal complaint to the police, and lodge a complaint about the funeral. Now, if the decision is made against not prosecuting these individuals, we are going to challenge the exercise of prosecutorial discretion around this in the Supreme Court. So that's what we are going to do within the means of the law, as much as citizens who want to be vigilant in the protection of our constitutional rights. Secondly, every citizen, and one of the reasons why the Constitution gives the president immunity is that it expects that certain things can be dealt with the political process. And every citizen can petition Parliament to call for the impeachment of the president. It's a clear dereliction of duty that I do not think that we should take them for granted. Our Constitution provides those remedies for us to test them and to hope that our constitutional democracy will grow from the experiences like this. So we personally, and I myself personally, would pursue those routes. If the system that we have put in place fails to produce the results that our constitutional democracy expects, the best we can do is to continue to push that conversation. And as long as we continue to do this and undermine the authority of the 1992 Constitution, we should also be aware that it may come to a point where the constitutional document will be so abused that the Fourth Republic itself may be in jeopardy.
Now, the minority in Parliament is asking Power Distribution Services to release to Electricity Company of Ghana an amount of 200 million cedis, which it has allegedly refused to give ECG since the deal was abrogated. Deputy Minister Designate for Energy Andrew Ejapa Mercer at his vetting said the PDS cannot move the money without the involvement of the ECG because it sits in an escrow account. Minority Chief Whip Mubarak Muntaka says Mr. Mercer will struggle in his position because the company he works for, TG Energy Solutions, was one of the PDS consortium partners. But Mr. Mercer disagrees.
I don't think I have an interest in Parliament.
So when Parliament collapses, Parliament is overthrown, it doesn't...
Chairman, as of, I believe, last Friday, yes.
So, Chairman, you see the difficulty that the company has going to the Minister of Energy as a Deputy Minister, when a company that not directly involved but indirectly involved is litigating with the Minister of Energy.
Mr. Chairman, if the committee finds it worthy to approve me, I don't see any difficulty at all. Like I've said, TG Energy is not my company, and so I do not see how a role that is only by appointment can influence my decision with respect to this great republic of ours. In any event, TG Energy hasn't got any. I don't think I have an interest in Parliament.
So when Parliament collapses, Parliament is overthrown, it doesn't matter to you?
Mr. Chairman, for purposes of protecting our democracy, I would be interested in Parliament existing and continuing the functions that is, which I believe is pretty important.
So if you are a director and a secretary to a company, how do you say that you don't have interest? I chose my words carefully. I didn't ask what I share. I asked, what is the nature of your interest?
Now, after 64 years of independence, Ghana now has a national security policy fashioned to govern its programs and activities. Among others, the document outlines the unique characteristics of the threats facing the country and offers innovative ways to confront them. The document also advocates the effective use of resources to promote effective decisions. At a ceremony to outdoor a new office complex for the National Security Ministry and a launch of the document, President Akufo-Addo moved for a more tolerant, people-centered approach as it starts a new phase. Presidential correspondent Elton Brobe was there for JoyNews.
The president, who is the chairman of the National Security Committee, opened the National Security Building, which is just behind me. Also launched the National Security Document, which has eluded Ghana since independence in 1957. And for the first time, the National Security Secretariat will have a working document that will guide or that will govern the application of what they have been entrusted by the people of this country to do. But according to President Akufo-Addo, regardless of the potency of the document, only implementation can bring it to life.
It is important to note, however, that a strategy, regardless of its potency, cannot yield desired results until successfully implemented. Our success will therefore be based on how we implement the national security strategy. To avoid the pitfall of implementational challenges, the national security strategy has been designed to adopt a whole of government and the whole of society approach in its implementation. More importantly, the implementation of the national security strategy will be driven systematically, transparently, and accountably.
Will this particular document, the first time since independence, work? I've been speaking to the ranking member on Parliament's Defense and Interior Committee, James Agaga, who says that it is only implementation that will give him confidence that for the first time we'll have a new beginning regarding the operations of the national security.
It is our hope that if this strategy is implemented, and there's a problem of implementation. Having the strategy in itself is not enough. You have to make a bold attempt to implement the brilliant ideas that have been espoused and are contained in the strategy. If we do that, yes, I would say there'll be better coordination, there'll be cohesion, and that way we can deal with some of the excesses that national security has been noted for.
The national security outfit has been in the news lately for all the wrongdoings. We can talk about the assault of the City FM journalists and the recent operation at Asankragua, which led to some people complaining about the brutalities they encountered with some operatives of the national security. We did not hear a condemnation or what the security outfit is trying to do to make it a Ghanaian-friendly establishment. But the Minister for National Security, Kandapa, says that the national security outfit will continue to respect the rule of law and the rights of individuals.
May I assure all Ghanaians that we pledge to respect the rule of law, fundamental human rights, and freedoms of all Ghanaians as enshrined in the 1992 Constitution of Ghana. But let me also caution that the respect for human rights must not be compromised with strategic threats to national security.
Pregnant women and other patients who want to access the University of Cape Coast Hospital have been left frustrated. The Federation of University Senior Staff Association at the University of Cape Coast has withdrawn essential and critical services that include the hospitals and schools. Over 6,000 members of the association and 10 public universities laid down their tools on May 19 in protest over poor working conditions and the failure of our government to pay accrued pensions. But despite government's assurance of further negotiations during their meeting, the association insists it will remain on strike. Richard Kwedunyako went around the University of Cape Coast campus and reports apart from the hospital, most of the classrooms at the university basic schools were without teachers, and students have taken over the teaching of their peers.
On the campuses of the University of Cape Coast, the strike by the Federation of the University Senior Staff Association was having a huge impact as members of the federation who work at the university hospital have withdrawn their services. Pregnant women who had come to be seen by hospital officials were left unattended too.
As a pregnant woman, you know that sometimes there will be complications. Even if there is none, you have to come so that you see that your baby is healthy or not. But here we are. I came here around 5. Then nothing is showing. I'm still sitting here.
And they are telling us that the antenatal books are finished because they have to go and take it from stores. And the stores people are also on strike. So because of that, no one can take care of her. Even the junior staff people cannot take care of her because there is no book for them to take the records inside. So we are just sitting here hoping that someone can come here to help us. It's very difficult. Some of us have to go to work too. And we've left work coming to take care of ourselves here and only to be told because they are on strike, nothing can be done to us.
The situation was no different at the University Basic School. The teachers who belong to the Federation were not in class when the task force went round whipping their members into line. The school pupils expressed their worry and called for something urgent to be done.
The teachers are gone, and as we are in the class, we are not doing anything. All we are doing is fooling, and one day will not get any job to do.
The strike has affected our teachers, and some of them are not even coming to school. So I will appeal to the government that they should try and stop the strike and pay them with their money so that we can get learning effective.
Director of the University Health Services, Dr. Evans Ekenam, says his outfit was doing all it can to contain the situation, but pleaded with the authorities to see to the end of the challenge.
The manpower that we need, those experienced hands, we don't have them on the ground, and it's really a problem. We've had to refer many of our cases to the teaching hospital, and that is not the best. That is not the best. So we are really feeling the impact on the ground. And but we still continue to do our work because we are health professionals. We are like military people. No matter what it is, we have to keep protecting our people, and that's a job we are still doing on the ground.
Chairman of the University of Cape Coast Federation of the University Senior Staff Association of Ghana, Sandy Kumisi-Natra, says they won't relent until their demands are met.
I'm highly impressed looking at the compliance level of our members. Almost all of them are at home, and we encourage them to continue to do that for us, as we also do our best as leaders to make sure that our demands are being pressed home. Unfortunately, no, that is not what we wish for the people. We wish that the academic calendar will not be disrupted, that people can go about their normal duties without any disruption. But unfortunately, where we are, we have no better option than to rope them in to strike, to press on our demands. The work of the task force has not been ended. It is now that we have even re-engineered them to go down to the grounds and do the work and do it effectively to make sure that none of our members comes to work so that the effects that we all anticipate will be achieved.
As the Federation has withdrawn the critical and essential services, the strike is becoming extremely biting. Patients and parents are calling on government to act to avert any unfortunate occurrences. Reporting for JoyNews, Richard Kwejunyakon, Cape Coast.
Well, from that strike action, let's talk NSMQ. And Prempeh College put up a spirited performance to beat St. Hubert's Seminary SHS in an exciting last round of 16 contests in the Love FM high school debate, actually. The day also saw a favorite in the last edition, Tepa SHS, fall to Bompata Presby SHS. Love FM's Erastus Cesare Donko has a wrap of the day's activities.
They wear similar green uniforms and are located a few meters away from each other at Santase and Sofoline in Kumase. Their rivalry was manifested in their Jama antiques before the contest. St. Hubert Seminary Senior High School and Prempeh College were later separated by wits, delivery and style and eloquence as they debated on the motion COVID-19 vaccination should be mandatory. At the end of the contest, the score stood at 216-225 in favor of Prempeh College.
many other misconceptions circulating concerning the vaccine. From the fallacy that anyone who takes the vaccine will die after 2 years, to the ideology that only 95% of those who get vaccinated are protected from the virus, leaving the remaining 5% unprotected. When in actual fact, the 95% safety means that people with the vaccine have a 95% lower risk of COVID-19 when compared to a control group. That year, the vaccine will do nothing but become a catalyst to a better Ghana when made mandatory. What else do you want?
The chair with the opposition team do agree that COVID-19 vaccination is relevant to our situation, but we say firmly that it should rather be voluntary and not mandatory, in the sense that people should get vaccinated out of their own free will under no suppression or intimidation. And the chair, we hope to convince you all with factually based and lucid reasons, which are the following. 1, the doubts cast on the actual purpose of the vaccines make COVID-19 vaccination a fallacy. 2, COVID-19 vaccination has failed its purpose. 3, some people are allergic to certain COVID-19 vaccine components. 4, the inadequate doses of vaccines make COVID-19 vaccination impossible.
The second contest saw previous contest favorite Tepa Senior High School exiting the competition in a 207-220 heated debate score against Bompata Presby. The motion was, social media is doing more harm than good to the Ghanaian society.
The addiction to the use of social media has a serious implication on time management. Most employees have social media accounts, and unfortunately, many have developed the habit of checking their account multiple times during the day, even when they are at work. Time spent on personal accounts is time not spent on work, and also not time spent interacting with their colleagues and developing quality work relationship. It's even worse in the case of students. Spending an hour a day on social media amount to 9 weeks a year. 9 weeks, that is enough to complete a couple of semester courses at the tertiary.
Firstly, the chair, it is an open fact that social media is now an alternative instructional tool of education in Ghana. Some students use social media to educate themselves on various topics. Social media platforms now help students to do research work and also to do group discussions among themselves, even when they are far from each other. The outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic proved the usefulness of social media sites such as Google Classroom, Zoom, YouTube, and a host of others in an attempt to prevent the face-to-face encounter. Some educational institutions migrated from face-to-face interaction to virtual platforms such as Zoom, Google Classroom, YouTube, Skype, and others.
It wasn't an easy motion, but then we had it easy because we did a lot of research with social media itself. So I think it is God gave us the wisdom to.
The Love FM High School debate resumes next week, Monday, with the quarterfinals of this banter of eloquence. Schools going into the quarterfinals are Kwaman Presby, St. Monica's Senior High School, Adventist Girls, Efiakobiampim Girls, Opokuwari School, Yasantua Girls, Prempe College, and Bompata Presby Senior High School. Reporting for Joy News, Erastus Asaredonko, Kumasi.
And on the note of that Love FM high school debate, that's how we wrap the morning's news. Coming up next is the news review. Do stay. Well, thank you for staying with us. Time now for us to dig into the newspapers this morning and tell you what exactly they're saying. And I'll be doing this together with my colleague, Gifty Andor Pia. But let me start with my stack of papers and then we shall usher in Gifty. I'll start with the Daily Graphic newspaper, where in fact the headlines talk about meeting conditions for unitization. And that's according to Springfield. You know, in yesterday's I believe the Daily Graphic or the Ghanaian Times newspaper, there was talk about how there would not be an impediment with that unitization. So that story is on page 20 of the Daily Graphic newspaper. There's also massive support greets 2021 census. Citizens profess readiness. You can find that story on page 16 of the paper. Also on page 16, cannabis production applications flood Narcotics Commission. And that is also there. There's a lot of talk about the medicinal use of narcotics or cannabis in the country, but others also want it to be extended like other countries have done. Then there's a national security strategy launched focuses on constitutional democracy, tolerance, and rule of law. There was a lot of talk about it yesterday, and when I get into that story, I'll share with you a bit of what Professor Enning, who's with the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center, also had to say about that. When you go into the paper, there's also Mali military leader sworn in as interim president. I'm talking about Assimi Goita, who's been sworn into office as the new interim president despite facing a diplomatic backlash over his second power grab in 9 months. You would recall that Mali has faced some sanctions from ECOWAS by way of being expelled thus far. So a lot more talk about that in there. When you turn to another page with international news, page 9, it talks about Biden calling on nations to boost their economies. And that's actually on page 9 of the paper. The center spread of the Daily Graphic talks about the unitization bit I spoke of earlier. But then there's this one. Pay attention to food safety. Minister urges the public. That's also in there. Should time suffice, we'll bring you details of that. On the back page of the paper, illegal fishing activities. Stakeholders want government action. And that's the call there, as the EU has been endorsing regulated fishing practices by appropriate classes of levels. Details when I dig into that paper. Do we have Gifty yet? Hello, Gifty.
Benjamin, I'm here. Good morning.
Great. Good to hear from you. I hope you're well this morning.
I'm blessed. How are you?
I'm also very well. So let's quickly, before I continue with my stack of papers, let's check out what papers you have and the headlines in them, and then I'll come back to those I have here in the studio.
Okay. I have the Daily Dispatch newspaper. I also have the BNFT. I have the Ghanaian Times, and then I have the Daily Guide newspaper. These are the four that I have, Benjamin.
Okay, so
Do you want me to go through the headlines?
Yes, let's take a quick look through them.
Okay, so the Daily Guide is reporting the banner headline, Opuni claims against Judge Arus. That's the Attorney General saying that. The story is on page 3 of the newspaper. And then there is, despite economic challenges, opportunities abound. That story is attributed to Ken Ofori-Atta, the finance minister. And then you have Nana unveils national security strategy, and wicked son kills mom, buries her secretly. That's the front page of the Daily Guide newspaper. Let's take a look at the Ghanaian Times newspaper. Ghanaian Times is reporting banner headline, government plans to deal with terrorism, violent extremism, as president launches national security strategy. So the national security strategy is also big here for the Ghanaian Times newspaper. Also, remain focused as government takes steps to revive economy in the midst of COVID-19. And Ghana Medical Association condemns flagrant disregard for COVID-19 safety protocols. So it is on page 15. That's the Ghanaian Times newspaper. I want to quickly go into the center spread of the Ghanaian Times newspaper. It says that, well, it gives you details of that story. Government plans to deal with terrorism and violent extremism. Also, road projects on course, according to Amapata, the sector minister, and World Food Safety Day observed in Accra. Also, other stories in the Ghanaian Times newspaper, 16 inmates test COVID-19 positive in Bando, and 2 Chinese, 1 Ghanaian arrested for transporting gold illegally. Police investigate murder of woman. Those are some of the stories you find in the Ghanaian Times newspaper, and there is sports as well. But let me quickly take you to the BNFT. The Business and Financial Times is reporting environmental degradation cost over $11 billion annually. I think, let me just quickly find the, yes. So the cover of the BNFT, huge imports still burdening Tor's debt portfolio. Government working to revive companies' fortunes. Debt reaches more than $340 million. And equities rebound in May, reach YTD high. So year to date high, not quite sure. And then under-resourced SEC impedes capital markets development. Story is on page 3. That's a BNFT for you. And MSMEs to be better positioned to drive economic growth. And then we've got that story about the environment degradation that's costing us $11 billion annually. That's quite alarming. In the center spread of the, the center spread of the Daily Dispatch. Okay, let me go to the front page before I come to the center spread of the Daily Dispatch. Big banner headline there: Implement Ghana's first national security strategy. The story is attributed to President Akufo-Addo. And I found him dead in his office. TB Joshua's wife is saying that one. Let's see the center spread. Okay, the back page of the Dispatch has the details of the president's admonition to the National Security Minister to implement our first security strategy. And then the center spread, Obeda Samwa, on the Nkrumah years in Ghanaian history. Summary of findings, conclusions, and policy implications in Upper East region, and household size, structure, and composition in Ghana. I don't know what the story is about. Finally, Pupuni Totibo Road nightmare, haunting drivers and residents. So, Benjamin, these are the stories that I have in the 4 newspapers that I have as well.
All right, so let's come back into the studio. I'll walk you through what the Finder, the Daily Dispatch newspapers are saying, and then we shall take it from there as we delve into the details of those newspapers that we have. The Finder this morning says government's domestic tourism drive will create 1 million jobs. That's according to Dr. Awal, the tourism minister. And he's been talking a lot lately about how we can boost tourism activities in our country and get more foreign exchange for the Republic. Oforiatta urges youth to take advantage of government's initiative, and that dovetails into the story from the Daily Guide, the front page of the Daily Guide. Nearly 16,000 agri-businesses fold up between May 2020 and January 2021. That's according to the Statistical Service. And Ghana adopts new security strategy as threats to nation evolve faster and with greater intensity. That's according to the president. It's something that we've read from in most of the papers this morning. Also relevant in light of what has happened in our sub-region, especially what is happening in Mali currently. GMA disappointed over disregard for safety protocols at Sir John's funeral, and First Lady supports tree planting to restore lost forests. So those are on the front page of the Finder newspaper. There's also this one tied to that very last headline I read: disregard for COVID-19 protocols at Sir John's funeral worrying, and that's according to Occupy Ghana. So it's not just the GMA. Occupy Ghana has also been talking about it. The Daily Dispatch newspaper now, and implement Ghana's first national security strategy. That's according to the president. And then this one, I found him dead in his office. TB Joshua's wife recounting what exactly happened a few days ago as we lost televangelist, philanthropist TB Joshua. That's on page 11 of the Daily Dispatch newspaper. When you turn to the back page, it's the story about implementing the national security strategy. So let's dig into the major stories as we have them. Gifty, which ones are you going to be focusing on from the papers you have?
Well, it's definitely going to be the national security strategy that Ghana has just launched. The sector minister took time to talk about this at his vetting, and I remember the details that he gave. I can't talk about all the details right now, but I remember it sounded to me exciting, and it sounded to me as something that if we should follow the way we ought to, that will have a lot of the problems we have as far as the way the national security operatives engage with the populace. We'll see a lot of improvements in that. I'm unable to read the details because the way that I see the papers here are it's a bit blurred. But Benjamin, I don't know if you can read for me perhaps the first paragraph or something. But we know that this happened yesterday. It also coincided with the launch of our new ministry, or the offices for the ministry. And it's, for me, exciting. If only we can stick to what the strategy says and exactly what we and focus on exactly what we want to achieve with this strategy. Benjamin, are you able to read for me the first or second paragraph? Is that possible?
So the story is in a number of newspapers. Would you like me to focus on the bit from the Ghanaian Times newspaper?
I believe that will be okay.
Because I feel it addresses a lot of these, including the bit about terrorism, extremism, and all of that. So the details on page 17 of the paper, it says President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has launched the National Security Strategy, a policy framework to guide the country's response to existing and future security threats. Now, the strategy is expected to help strengthen the country's capabilities to enable it address violent extremism and terrorism and optimize the effectiveness of the security and intelligence sector by revamping the current systems and structures. It is further geared towards, and I'm quoting Mr. President here, it is further geared towards strengthening state response to current and future threats while enhancing our prevention, protection, and response capabilities. Of course, it goes on to talk about the sort of terrorist activities that we've seen so continuously or incessantly in our sub-region. So in a nutshell, that is what the story shares from the Ghanaian Times newspaper, Gifty.
And always, the devil is in the detail, right? We need to break it down and look at the details and see how it actually addresses the problems that we have. I think one of the major problems that we've had is how operatives of the national security system have related with us in the populace. I mean, look at the CTF situation. Look at the Caleb Koda's account of how he was handled. Look at Asankpegwa, for example. These are the latest things that have happened that has caused public uproar, right? So I believe that we have been doing all of these without a strategy, without a policy. Now that we have one as a country, how can we harness the details in that policy? And the National Security Minister at his vetting indicated that this was put together by so many people, so many stakeholders, including former national security coordinators and national security advisors, which is people from different governments, right? So I believe that this was done in good faith, bringing together everybody, irrespective of the political party that they belong to, and we've been able to put together this document. If we stick to the document, I believe, and work on the loopholes that we will find as we go along, I believe it will work very efficiently. Looking at what happened in Burkina Faso, we know that the threat of terrorism is it cannot be overemphasized, Benjamin. This is something that Burkina Faso, we share borders with Burkina Faso, by the way, in the northern part of the country. And so we can't say it, we can't overemphasize it. What we do with this strategy will go a long way to determine whether or not we can correct ourselves, even if we find that we went wrong, whether or not we can deal with violent extremism, whether or not we can improve the relationship between the populace and national security operatives, and whether or not we can build the public confidence, that is required for any national security ministry to be effective. And public confidence is key. We know that the public confidence in the police, for example, has suffered, has been beaten. Hopefully, this is a time for us to correct the mistakes that were made in the past. And I understand, Benjamin, that there's a fund that has been created. I think we need clarity about what this fund is, how it is supposed to operate. Individuals, anybody can just contribute to the fund. What is it? Can people demand accountability of the fund? Because we know the national security budget is usually not scrutinized. So what really is this fund for? Who can contribute to it? How important or how dangerous will it be opening up our national security to anybody's funding? I don't know if I'm making the point clear for you enough, but yeah, these are some of the things that we should consider as far as I'm concerned. But for me, it's exciting. It's exciting that we can go to the ministry and say, this is a building for the National Security Ministry. So if anything happens, we know where to go to. I hope that we can apply the details in the strategy as well.
Well, very germane points you're making. And that last point that you make there is what my focus is, because I suppose if there were a ranking in the entirety of the world in respect of some of the countries with the best policy frameworks, the best statutes and all of that, I believe Ghana would be very high up in there. But when it comes to implementation, actualizing the things we put in our law books, we have in our statutes and all of that, that is where, like you were saying, the devil is in the detail. The implementation usually is the problem. So for some of us, we wait to see. Yesterday, as we engaged Professor Enning, I heard things about how this actually wouldn't be the first time we have something of the sort, going back to the Nkrumah administration. But of its nature as it is, obviously, it would be a novelty. We're just waiting to see how it will pan out in terms of real effect. You also spoke about the bit about ordinary citizens and how, the relations have been between national security and ordinary citizens. We wait to see. We wait to see really how things will pan out.
And I think that the goodwill has been, the background or the stage has been set for a certain level of goodwill for the National Security Ministry, because people then get the feeling that, okay, this is a ministry that's actually working to deal with some of the concerns that have come up. So let's give it the benefit of the doubt and let's see how it actually corrects the mistakes that we have endured, suffered over the period.
So, Gifty, I'd like to pick your brains on this matter, but before I cite some other countries, let me just read from page 16. The story is actually on pages 16 and 20 of the Daily Graphic newspaper. Cannabis production applications flood Narcotics Commission. And according to the story, the Narcotics Control Commission has reminded all that the use of cannabis is illegal and a criminal offense in the country, in spite of Ghana having joined a few other countries to allow for the cultivation of the substance, also known as weed, for purely medicinal purposes. The Commission has, however, received applications from many groups, companies, and individuals for licenses to cultivate cannabis for industrial or medicinal purposes. And so now it's a real test. You know that in countries like South Africa, Georgia, Canada, even Jamaica allows it for some medicinal purposes, some religious purposes as well. But there is this push. And you can even go as far back as what former Secretary General of the United Nations, may his soul rest in peace, Kofi Annan, said about, well, some of these things, you can legalize them and, of course, get revenue from them by way of taxes. What's your take on this, Gifty?
Well, I'll probably stand in the middle of the pros and cons. There have been...
You can't stand on the wall here. You can't be Humpty Dumpty and stand on the wall or sit on the wall.
There have been arguments, Benjamin, there have been arguments for and against. Those who make the argument for have talked about the economic impacts that we can actually derive from the, not the use, but from allowing sort of an industrial level of production when it comes to the use of cannabis, for medicinal purposes, etc. There have also been the concern by those who are against it that do we have the infrastructure? Do we have the necessary the
mechanisms? Do we have the mechanisms in place?
Are we ready to go the way that Canada has gone? Are we ready to go the way that some parts of Netherlands have gone? Do we have the rehab centers, for example? Because once you open up the floodgates, then there is always a way that people can abuse the system. Okay, so that's why you're having an overflow of applications. People, you have to apply. So our laws didn't say go out there and smoke weed. That's not what it said. But it's allowing for a certain level of usage, especially for medicinal purposes, etc. So people are applying. But we know that people can abuse systems. We do that a lot in this country. So the thing is, are we ready for the abuse? Are we ready for the excesses? Are we ready for the things that will come up as a result of this particular
But
policy?
Gifty, in those countries where they have legalized them, you mentioned the Netherlands, you mentioned South Africa, among other countries. Have we seen these excesses? I believe it's akin to the issue we've been talking about in recent times about allowing people with certain hairstyles to get into our senior high schools. Doesn't necessarily mean that once you do that, you've opened the floodgates, there's going to be a proliferation of this or that. Is that really the case?
I believe that the two don't compare at the same level. The two scenarios that you're creating do not compare at the same level. I mean, you're talking about hairstyles, etc. But you're talking about
but the same argument has been raised, basically, that once you open the floodgates, I mean, that cuts across.
Not necessarily, but you talk about somebody's hairstyle. That's something that we have to deal with. But then you're talking about something that has to do with people's health, something that can be very addictive, something that can be very tempting, right? And you're talking about
something that is also medicinal for some people.
It is medicinal, but we also know that there are parts of it that can be dangerous to the health of people, especially young people. And all that I'm trying to say is that in these countries that we've talked about, these are wealthier countries. If you compare their economies to us, if you compare how they take care of their citizens to us, they have certain structures that makes it easy for them to deal with some of these excesses. The excesses are there, trust me. The use of drug, the abuse of drug, and the excesses it has had on these countries, they are there. If you are to scrutinize it very carefully, it will come out clearly to you. I believe that I stand with the people who have argued that we are not ready. We don't have the systems in Ghana that allows for us to, gamble, for lack of a better expression, with this policy,
experiment,
or to gamble with the use of cannabis or the use of weed. So it's up to us now, because we've already passed the law. The applications are coming in. What can we do at this point to, do the chicken and egg, balance it out, get the economic benefits, but also protect our citizens from abusing it, which we know is highly possible.
Okay, so let's do two related stories from the Daily Guide newspaper, which you have, and it's on page 6. Both of them tie into the conversation about safety on our roads. The first one is actually by Daniel Bampo, and he says, MTTD clear Accra Kumasi speed bumps. Now, the MTTD of the Ghana Police Service, in conjunction with the maintenance unit, the Ghana Highway Authority, has started removing all the speed bumps on the Accra Kumasi Highway, which is causing unnecessary gridlocks and inconvenience to travelers. They will replace them with rumble strips, but the situation, residents in the towns where the bumps are prevalent are complaining about speeding and the unjustifiable killing of pedestrians. The situation compelled the Director General of the Motor Traffic and Transport Department of the Ghana Police Service, COP Frederick Eduenim, to visit the affected areas, and they are being called on to facilitate the process to do more. But tied to that, Gifty, showboating cabbie injures 2 children. And that is on the same page of the paper, also tying into the conversation about road safety. And this one is totally needless because it was an unnecessary display and tooting of horns by some taxi drivers in Takwa as part of preparations towards the burial of their colleague, deceased taxi driver, ended in tragedy. 2 school children aged 5 and 7 who were on their way to school were hit by one of the displaying vehicles, injuring them severely. And this happened on Friday, June the 4th at about 7 a.m. in Takwa. I'm linking this to the fact that we've heard the news, we've got the reports in recent times about how within, the first, it's not even 6 months yet, we've lost so many lives in this country. There have been so many accidents, and the situation is dire indeed. Your take, Gifty?
I don't know why we spend so much time and resources talking about speed bumps and dealing with speed bumps. I know that there are instances where speed bumps can be such a nuisance. But for me, really, tackling accidents on our roads, as far as I'm concerned, maybe I'm ignorant, but it has nothing to do with speed bumps. I think that we have bigger problems, and we should major on the major and stop majoring on the minor.
But Gifty, right before you go on, there are, in those areas, like has been cited in the Daily Guide newspaper on page 6, there are some areas where people speed unnecessarily. And sometimes you have, school children and all of that getting affected. Don't you think it's only relevant that we have speed bumps, sleeping watchmen on those roads to ensure that at least the cars are forced to stop? Of course, the other side of that would be that for those who are not aware those speed ramps or bumps are there, sometimes they facilitate accidents themselves.
Yes, That's so common. That's so common. So the point is that I think that to measure, when I say measure on the measure, it's about the necessary punitive actions that ought to come to people who are found culpable of breaking our traffic rules and people who are found culpable of causing accidents and killing people. That way it becomes a deterrent. Although people still behave however they want to behave, whether or not these things are being done. But the more you do it, the more, you see, it's about, I don't know, but you create speed ramps in a place where you believe that people are speeding. But I tell you, Benjamin, that there have been times where people speed anyway, irrespective of having the. If you travel on the Adenta.
A bit of a glitch there with Gifty's feed. We'll see whether we can reconnect with her and wrap quickly. But this is something I'd wanted to take Gifty's thoughts on, and it's also on page 8, the entertainment page of the Daily Guide, right before we do My Joy on line.com. Take a cue from TB Joshua's death. Now, what cue? Let me read the details for you. Media personality Ekwia Mwakwa, popularly known as Ekwia GMB, says people who brag about their acquired properties should learn a lesson from Prophet TB Joshua's death. Gifty, welcome back. Do wrap on your point, and let's get into something I believe you're going to be interested in.
Okay, so the point I was trying to make is that
Let's quickly proceed. It's unfortunate I couldn't pick your brains on this, but the late founder of the Synagogue Church of All Nations, she indicated as of 2011 had a net worth of 10 to 15 million US dollars, but he wasn't going to be buried with any of his property. That, she added, should be a big lesson to those who boast about owning this or that. I don't know whether, he was that a braggart, so to speak, in terms of what he had acquired. What I do know is that he had attained quite a lot. He was one of those renowned televangelists, and he also contributed his bit as a philanthropist. But in there is also a lesson that really the wealth we gain here, vanity upon vanity, like the Bible will tell us. It's not something we can fall on any day. Let's quickly check out myjoyonline.com, and we have that story there, and everybody is talking about it, from the GMA to Occupy Ghana. Minority demands apology from Akufo-Addo for flouting the Imposition of Restrictions Act at Sir John's funeral. And mind you, all the prominent personalities, even His Excellency the President, the Vice President, were there. There's also this one. Appointments Committee freezes approval of Ejapa Mercer as Deputy Energy Minister. And you know why. We've been giving you details of that. Fix the Country campaigners to petition IGP over breach of COVID-19 protocols at Sir John's funeral. So that's another body joining the fray. Only Almighty can lessen our heartbreak. That's according to TB Joshua's wife. Our condolences to them and the entire church. We are not living in a democracy. Hashtag Fix the Country convener reacts to the flouting of COVID-19 protocols at Sir John's funeral. And then still staying on that funeral, investigate and deal with organizers. GMA demands of the police. Wrapping up with these stories, 2 injured, property destroyed as fire ravages Elmina fishing market. And then more on TB Joshua. 6 times TB Joshua sparked controversy. The final story I'll take there, Sir John's funeral. Do you have the right to implement same law you're breaking? Occupy Ghana asks government. You can check out more stories on myjoyonline.com. Many more stories there. But coming up next, we have sports, which is coming your way. Do stay for that.
Despite playing for the Three Lions, conversations are that Huston Odoi might just switch nationality to playing for Ghana after meeting the president of the country, Nana Akufo-Addo, on Monday. The president said that he has asked the Minister of Youth and Sports, Mustafa Usif, to ensure that he gets him to switch his nationality. Today, the Ghana Rugby Football Union will be deciding on the future of Herbert Mensah as the leader of that union after the Players' Union had petitioned the board to have him suspended from office and removed permanently. Today, they are going into a meeting called the Special General Meeting, and a decision on his future as a leader would be taken. Also in the Ghana Premier League, Legon Cities worsened the woes of Inter Allies after defeating them by 1-0. I am Muftau Nabila Ablai, and this is AM Sports. First, let's start with Hudson Odoi, because he has been speaking about his availability for playing for the country. Yesterday, he had a meeting with the president of the country, Nana Akufo-Addo, and he says that he has asked the Minister of Youth and Sports, Mustafa Usif, to work on getting him switch his nationality to playing for Ghana. Conversations about the possibility of calling Hudson Odoi representing Ghana in international games. The player says he chose to play for the English because they gave him an opportunity of representing them.
When they obviously gave me the cool opportunity to come, there was something that obviously is international, you're in the country already, something that I already had my mindset on playing and already playing for England. So it was a thing where obviously choosing Ghana or England, at the end of the day, I said that I always have the right people behind me who would always advise me on what's right and what's wrong. So England came and I said, yeah, let me go and play for my country in national. But I said, Ghana's my home as well. So we will see, we never know, so we'll see.
Despite playing for the Three Lions, Hudson is still eligible of playing for the Black Stars. Following a meeting with the president of the country, Nana Akufo-Addo, on Monday, the president said he has urged the Minister for Youth and Sports, Mustafa Usif, to explore the possibility of having Callum switch nationality and play for the Black Stars. And still on story that has to do with the Black Stars, yesterday reports emerged that Thomas Partey, the first deputy captain of the national team, was sacked by head coach CK Akono. Well, the GFA have released a statement revealing that Thomas Partey was excused, just as reported by Joy Sports. A statement by the Ghana Football Association corroborated Joy Sports sources, stating that Thomas Partey travelled to Cape Coast on Thursday to meet coach CK Akono over some personal issues. After the meeting, which lasted about an hour, the coach excused him from the trip to Morocco and asked him to report to camp for the second game against Ivory Coast. As the first deputy captain of the Black Stars, Thomas later joined his colleagues in training to show solidarity and support before leaving for Accra. The Arsenal midfielder would team up with the rest of the squad on Thursday when the team returns from Morocco. On Tariq Fosu, the football governing body said the youngster reported to camp on Friday evening after the size training session in Cape Coast. Coach Akono engaged him briefly and told him that reporting late had scuppered his chances of traveling with the team to Morocco. The Brentford winger will also join the team on Thursday for the game against Ivory Coast. Kamal Dil Suleiman, Kamal Sowa, and Joseph Pencil, according to the GFA, gave varied reasons that clearly confirmed that they are not ready for the games. They therefore turned down the invitation. Other players such as Frank Echampong, Mubarak Wakaso, and Richard Ofori are all not part of the squad that was invited by CK. For Frank Echampong, he is bereaved and has been excused from taking part in the friendly match. Wakaso, due to COVID-19 issues, have been asked to quarantine for 14 days and will miss the matches to be played this week. Whilst Richard Ofori suffered a groin injury during his club's CAF Confederation Cup game against ESFTF. The Black Stars will face Morocco later tonight. Still on national team stories, and we go to the camp of the Black Meteors now because they will be facing Japan again after their first match ended in a mauling that they lost by 6-0. Assistant coach of the team is Yusuf Basigi, and he's been speaking about how he believes that the team have recovered from that defeat, and this time around they will give a presentable performance against the Japanese.
The fact that we've not put ourselves together for a very long time, you could see the glimpses of a good team. unfortunately, the Japanese, they are well-rehearsed side with good tactical play, and it really worked for them, because if you look at our side, it was quite individualistic, which didn't help team cohesion. They took advantage of the lapses on our side, and they punished us as a result of that. But now we have also come back to do post-match analysis. We've picked all the weaknesses from our side and the strength from their side. So now we are putting the pieces together to play them in our next game, which I think it will yield very good results this time around.
Unfortunately, I couldn't start the first game, but I sat on the bench. I've assessed them well. We have psyched ourselves for the next game, and we are highly motivated.
We had a post-match analysis. We did a lot of review. We did a lot of evaluations, and there have been positive and then negative feedbacks, because we gave them chance to go and reflect on the game. Now we did the evaluation, and the feedback that we had both positive and negative feedback. So we are now going to separate the two and then see which one will be good for us. Ghanaians should take it easy with us, because this is a good exercise that will give us the exposure. It has exposed our weaknesses and our strengths. And yes, the scoreline may be too huge. All the same, I think that they have to be patient with us, and we are going to improve match after match. So it's a matter of being patient. I know we need the result, we need good results, and getting the results alone is not enough. See, but getting a good team is the best. The results at times, yes, is so humiliating. The blending or getting a very good team is what matters most.
And that is Yusuf Basigi, very confident that the team will recover. He says that getting results is necessary, but what matters most is for them to build a formidable team. Now let's talk Ghana Premier League news, because Inter Allies' chances of surviving relegations was hampered by Legon Cities when they met yesterday on March 28 in the Ghana Premier League. Legon Cities won by 1-0.
We won. Dauda is out of his space into no man's land, but it's a foul, yeah. That suggests that the passing hasn't been on.
Now Isaka for Richmond entry. He's got Nat Aqua behind. He sends a deep cross in. Aljiman Bedu heads it down, and it's for Lamte now. Ayana's delivery. This is the goal. Sefas Doku. Wow. Lagos Cities are up by 1-0. That free kick delivered by Anaya, it didn't look troublesome, but somewhere
getting on top of over the goalkeeper there. It's almost like a dink of a header.
Yep.
Over the heads of the goalkeeper who can.
Paula Banga lines up for a shot. Good save for Tao Dauda. Great goalkeeping. Brilliant.
Yeah, that was traveling. That's one touch, touched himself, and then he unleashed what looked like a very powerful effort. Yeah, Fatau Dauda had to produce the save, but the ball was moving towards him. It was in a good place.
Nat Aqua. Richmond entry wants to turn onto his favorite left foot. Entry! We're at the end of the game right now, but here is Kuku. Sends the cross in. Dauda with a beautiful catch.
That should do it. That should do it. That should do it.
It's over. Monday Night Football.
It's always a pleasure to be here. Thank you for staying with us on the AM show. And at this juncture, it's all about some matters of national concern that we have all been talking about in recent times. I laid them bare at the start of the show, and we're going to dig into them now as we host our guest, Murtala Mohammed, Member of Parliament for Tamale Central. He also is a member of the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament, as well as the Trade, Industry and Tourism Committee of Parliament. He joins us for this discussion. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, and good morning to your cherished viewers.
We were sharing right before getting on. I had wanted to mention that you're a former Deputy Minister for Trades and Industry, and you chipped in the other one. How come we always forget?
Yes, maybe perhaps because I didn't spend much longer, at the Ministry of Information as I did. In fact, I was even sent to employment. I remember
Employment and Labor Relations.
Yeah. When President Mahama won the elections in 2012, myself and my brother, Comrade Felix Kwachi, were the two deputy ministers to Honorable Ayarga. So we were there for, I think, a year. I remember when we used to do the daily briefing at the Flagstaff House. So after a year, I was moved to employment for just 3 weeks when I got a call that they were moving me to trade. So perhaps because I spent longer time, almost 3 years at the Ministry of Trade. Maybe that's the reason why most of you guys...
It's interesting because most of us remember you for that. And we're even talking about that interview we had some time back. But to kick, just to set the ball rolling, the last time you came here,
yes,
we're talking about your speaking patois. Do you want to give us any rendition this morning?
No, I won't today. Interestingly, I had Samson
Ladi.
He sent me a WhatsApp message that, hey, I surprised him. When we were in Legon, Samson and I were very, very close. To tell you, even Samson's wedding in Kumasi, I attended. He invited me. So when we were in Legon, it was about student politics. Many of my colleagues on campus, except those who attended the same secondary school and teacher training college with me, most of my friends didn't know that I have the side to you background. But it's interesting. It's a language I still continue to learn.
Give us one line, Honorable. Give us something. Just one line. One line for the morning. I remember the last time you came, Wagwan and Wayagwan, and we say this, we say that. I was like, hey.
There's a book that was existence, I remember. Fortunately, I got the book from a good friend of mine, Sharif Gali, the musician. Apparently, Sharif also got the book from Black Rasta. Black Rasta, Sharif and I we have been very, very...
Oh, so that's the source, eh?
No, I started long before, but we've been very, very good friends, to tell you the
truth.
Right. Black Rasta is one genuine and honest guy. To be very on aside, what he does on radio, he's a very honest, forthright person. And he is a Pan-Africanist. And if you believe in Pan-Africanism, you should at least understand 1 or 2 lines.
If you believe in Pan-Africanism, you must, have 1 or 2 lines under your belt when it comes to patois.
The language is not a language that is created out of weed smoking or, like I said the other time, there was no language called patois long before, slavery. I mean, I think that when our brethren were taken from Africa and many parts of the world to Europe and to America, they were deprived of their languages, their original languages. Imagine a Dagomba man or a Frafra man or an Asante man or a Ga man taken as a slave from Ghana. And then another person, a Bambara, a Malinki or Fula from Guinea or from Senegal. They were all taken to America, some to Europe. They didn't understand any other language but their own languages. They were deprived of these languages.
So meeting on the plantations and the rest, how were they going to?
They introduced the English language to them. So this was not their language. So they were forced to learn the language and abandon their original language. You can imagine the frustrations in the head. So they introduced their own language, and that language was patois. It was an attempt to destroy the English language, to create their own language. So where they will say oppress, they say down press. Where do you say me, they say I. Where do you say I, they say me. Are you getting it? They shortened some of the language because that was the only way by which they could communicate. So if I say, Wayagwan, where are you going? What is happening? So going, they say, Guan, I and I, those things. These are some of the things. I took particular interest to learn this language. I'm a Pan-Africanist. You may disagree or agree. That is none of my business. But I believe in the Pan-Africanist Pan-African ideals.
Right.
So if you read and then you want to have an appreciation of it, you certainly would come across, patois language, because it reminds us of how far we have come.
How far
the subjugation, the denial of the birthrights of our brethren who are now, in Western Europe. That is so hurtful. So you must make the effort to learn this language.
We almost made the effort then.
Unfortunately, people associate that language with weed. And that's why I said that day that Minatika hula hem, Minatika wisdom with both Ayman and Rasta.
Can you do that line again? Do it again.
I said Minatika hula hem, Minatika wisdom weed, but Ayman and Rasta. They call weed like ganja, a hula hem, holy hem.
Holy herb.
Yes, or a wisdom weed. The wisdom weed. They believe that the first ganja was found on the tomb of King Solomon. That's what they believe.
Oh, I see.
And they believe that Africa is Zion. A whole lot of interpretations. So you can have Rastafarianism, which is a religion, and Rastafarianism or Rastafari. So I may not believe, I'm a devout Muslim. I'm an unrepentant Muslim. But I believe in the Pan-African ideals. And if you believe in those things and you have read wide about Pan-Africanism, you would come across some of the issues of patois language. And I took particular interest. When I was in the secondary school, particularly at the teacher training college, we used to do competitions and weekends, you come, and then I love reggae.
Let me just ask you this brief one.
Yes.
Have you never smoked weed?
Never. Even cigarette, I have never tasted.
You've never smoked?
Never. I have never tasted alcohol, let alone smoke.
Okay.
Never.
All right. So you believe in this Pan-African identity and all that. You mentioned the smoking of weed a short while ago. And interestingly, now we have a lot of bodies, a lot of people. It's just a short while ago that we allowed for the use of cannabis or weed for strictly, or ganja. Or Mary Jane, right?
Yeah.
Okay. For strictly medicinal purposes. But now people are calling on us to follow the example of the Canadas, the Georgias, the South Africas, the Netherlands, to make it acceptable for use on the recreational level. What do you think about that? And some have also raised the argument about raising more taxes. Former Secretary General Kofi Annan even raised that point. What is your brief take on that?
I know my good friend Black Rasta would disagree entirely with me, but unfortunately he has to disagree with me. I really don't think that we need to do that now. I really don't think. We ought to tread cautiously. There is nothing wrong with it being, legalized for medicinal purposes. There are a lot of medicines we take that have alcohol in them or that are produced out of alcohol for the purposes of taking care of our health needs. But if we want to legalize it for the purposes of recreation, I think that it will get out of hand. So if you ask me, my candid opinion, I really don't think that it should be, legalized on the basis of recreation. So what it simply means is that anybody can take it at any point in time. Weed, if you understand the history of it, ganja is not supposed to make someone behave rudely. Now, if what I have read, it makes the takers of it sober. It makes them reflective. It makes them calm. But many people who take them as it is associated, it could be perception or not, they get engaged in actions that for me are extremely dangerous. But for me, the issue is not just about ganja. The issue is about the codeine, the tramadol, the other things that young people are taking. For me, that is extremely worrying. So if you combine that with this, people may not just be taking ganja alone. Once you think that ganja should be legalized for the purposes of recreation, people can add several things in it. I really think it would be dangerous. I know my good friends will disagree, but...
So you think for now, Ghana is not ready for that?
I think so. For medicinal purposes, But you see, we also need to be very careful when we just want to follow what happens in the Western world. I listen to...
Well, it's not just the Western world. There's South Africa, for example. There are countries in Africa that
South Africa, they've just legalized, polyandry. Polyandry. Are we legalizing polyandry here, where a woman
can marry multiple partners?
We need to be very, very careful. And if you understand the politics in South Africa is one place I have lived.
So do you think South Africa's example here is a bad one for the rest of Africa?
Absolutely. I think it is
it's a bad example, South Africa, or precedent they are setting.
In situation, it may be understandable. But I'm saying that in our case, and in many African countries, it will be dangerous. Look, as the Secretary General of the All Africa Students Union, I had an office in South Africa. I dealt with the student leadership in South Africa. Malema was a very, and he has been a very, very good friend. I dealt with them, and I can understand how the history of South Africa and how far they have come. The fact that some certain things are happening in South Africa doesn't mean that we should let them happen here. Looking at the consequences of those actions. And we have attempted such in the past, if you know. And even when this thing is not regularized on any basis, we know the effect of it. Some people have taken this and then lost their senses. As to whether that occasioned they losing their senses is another. So how can you take an action on something you can't be certain as to its regulation and its, protection, particularly young people? I think it would be dangerous.
Okay. Let's delve into another matter that has been prominent in terms of our discourse. It's quite a number of matters that we're discussing today. And yesterday we were met with or greeted with, that national security strategy. We heard from the National Security Minister, His Excellency, the President himself, talking about the need for this at this point in time to fight violence, violent extremism, terrorism, and also to create a framework that we can really apply when it comes to national security. It's interesting because that comes on the back of what we've seen, some allegations and even, you could say, assault claims that have been made, the most recent one being Caleb Kuda, among many others, some journalists from here having been assaulted by officials. Then we also hear of ACP Kwesi Ofori, saying that, especially in respect of Fix the Country, that if you misbehave, you will be disciplined. You get it. Looking at this strategy that we've come up with and what you know so far, do you feel it's apt that is going to address some of these systemic challenges we've seen over time when it comes to the national security apparatus? And of course, here I'm mentioning the police as well because they feed into that, sometimes seconding people there. Do you think this is our solution? What do you think about this strategy?
Well, in the first place, since when did this government realize that the need to protect the rights of citizens can only be captured in a so-called national security strategy? I mean, the Constitution is explicit, and apart from the Constitution, there have been several cases determined by our courts in this country. There have been several legislative instruments that seeks to deepen and widen what is already captured in the 1992 Constitution, i.e. the protection of the rights of citizens. Now, when I listened to the Minister for National Security and the President, I didn't know whether I should cry or I should laugh. And in fact, on my way, I listened to them again this morning on Joy FM, when before you guys had the newspaper review. So the question is that we have had laws in this country that ensures the protection of the fundamental rights of it. In fact, it's an enshrined clause of the 1992 Constitution. And this is not the first time we are having such a national, security strategy. I listened to Dr. Inim, and it's true. In 1960,
Professor Inim,
Professor Inim, sorry. Somewhere in 1962, 63, there was...
He mentioned 1963.
Yes, 1963. And in fact, the discussion and the need to have that started in 1962. That we had a national security strategy. If you look at Kwame Nkrumah's 7-year development plan, 5 years and later upgraded to 7 years, there were issues of strategic position taken in the matter of security. Be it as it may, we have had laws. What has this government done in ensuring that they honor the obligation as enshrined in the 1992 Constitution? We have had laws passed, this anti-vigilantism, bill, which was enacted, I think, before the 2020 elections. After that, what happened? We have had series of abuses of the fundamental rights of people. What has this government done? I mean, clearly, recent one, the Ashanti Regional, Security Coordinator.
Yes.
Mind you, this anti-vigilantism and others were passed even before what happened to him. What has happened to that case?
Well, to be fair, it was mentioned, he did mention some group tied to the MPP, supposedly, but the claim has been made that that group is no longer functional, and that yes, nothing bars these people from eventually getting into the national security setup, and that some of them indeed have ended up there. I mean, that is the counter that has been.
I think that story
brought to the fore.
That story should be told to the Marines. And like I said,
to the Marines.
To the Marines. In fact, clearly what this government is doing is what I have consistently described as cartoon scenario reality. Let's create the impression that we are doing something when in actual fact we are not. Those laws, there are already laws, both in the Constitution and laws that have been enacted through Parliament and decisions that have been taken by the courts of this country, ensuring that the fundamental rights of people are protected. What has this government done? Look, it is not just about having laws, but it's about having the political will to ensure that those laws are actually enforced. Now tell me, in this country, how many laws haven't we had that those laws have been broken? Now, if you tell me that there have been cases where those groups, and by the way, my senior comrade, Koiku Bako, who is a very good friend of this government, sat on your program and
I don't know about his being a very good friend of this government.
But I don't think that he can deny it. He's a very good friend.
I'm sure he will tell you that he's a very good friend to many administrators.
No, he's not a friend to the NDC.
He's not?
No.
Where's your proof?
He has repeatedly stated publicly that he's against the NDC and repeatedly stated...
Well, not that I know of. I issued that disclaimer.
Please, on your program, on Joy, he repeatedly stated the NDC will not come to power, will never win the election. 2012, what didn't he say? I mean, he's not a friend. He's a senior brother to some of us and a senior comrade. And I've said, unashamedly, that he's somebody who tutelaged most of us. And I remember my days on the campus of University of Ghana, when he was a true comrade. He's no longer a true comrade. There is an aspect of him which is the pseudo-patriot of the NPP, and there's an aspect of him which is... But I still value the kinds of training that he gave, because we used to invite them to come and give us lectures. Comrade Kwesi Prad, Dr. Yao Graham and co, and I still value that. But he's a very good friend of this government and the MPP. But what I want to say is that he himself had indicated that he at least identified about 2 of them who were members of the Delta Force. Nobody can deny that. Now, assuming without admitting that they are not members of the Delta Force or the Delta Force is no longer existent, what has happened to those people? What has happened? Isn't the media interested in finding out what has happened to the people for the purposes of ensuring that everybody lives within the ambit of law? But you see, now they have moved beyond just terrorizing NDC and other, citizens of this country. They are terrorizing their own people. And the media is not only the Kuda. Your journalist who was beaten to pulp, whose life was virtually truncated. What have you guys done about it? Why? I just want to know what Joy, Multimedia, what you have done about what happened to your journalist at the police headquarters. What has happened? The gentleman was virtually made crippled. I don't know, and I wish him a speedy recovery. What has happened? And you think that if this thing had happened under NDC, you guys would have been in this absolute state of incommunicado, that you are no longer talking about it. You see, when you have it...
But we have spoken about it. So this incommunicado bit that
what have you said? That's why I'm asking, what is the state of the gentleman now? Aren't you interested in ensuring that you find out what happened? Those who did that to that gentleman are brought to book. But you see, when you live in...
But how about the legal process? The matter is in court, isn't it?
Interesting. When you live in a country where you have a section of your media, they follow the president and the MPP like shadow. I mean, anytime the MPP zags, you have a section of the Ghanaian media zags. And in fact, the sad aspect of it is that in most instances, you find journalists who are speaking their mind. Then you find another group of journalists who are attacking them. Your own Manasseh Azure, who had the freedom to write anything about President Mahama. Even to the extent that the day President Mahama lost his mother, that morning, he published those falsehoods about President Mahama. The day he lost his mother. And it was discussed on Joy FM.
So let's bring that back into the national security conversation.
But let me finish this. I'm coming.
No, I'm saying finish it, but let's hasten the process. There's a table of matters we have to discuss.
It has to do with the national security. It has to do with the issues. I'm saying that he published that. Nothing happened to him. He never left the shores of this country. He didn't even come back to the north. He's a brother. But what happens to him under this government? His own account. So I'm saying that, look, you can have such national security strategies million times. it will come to nothing if you don't have the political will to ensure that the existing laws are enforced.
So are you projecting that this will come to nothing, basically? Is that what you're projecting? Following the sequence of events, are you projecting that this entire national security strategy will amount to nothing?
Look, I don't want to be a pessimist, but one thing...
But is that what you're thinking?
I mean, one thing that is a fact is that it's not just about laws. Laws themselves are nothing, but the political will to enforce the laws. Strategies and policy documents are nothing, but the determination, the honest and sincere desire to ensure that those strategies, those policies formulated are implemented. So you can have laws, and I'm saying that, tell me, are we lacking laws that ensures the protection of the fundamental rights of the citizens of this country in our statutes? No. There are already existing laws. Have we been able to enforce those laws under this government? No.
So is this much ado about nothing?
I don't pray it is, but looking at the history of this government and this party and this president and this Minister for National Security, and the fact that just less than 2 months or 3 months ago, you had another, national security, regional security coordinator appointed by the same government who was manhandled. He granted interview to you guys and said the dehumanizing circumstance under which he was treated and mentioned the names of those who treated him, that what happened to it. But again, in this country, you had a seat of government at the Flagstaff House where Nanka Bruce was beaten to pulp. The president and the government, they were not interested in ensuring those who did that to an officer of the state. They were not interested. You know what they were interested? They were interested in finding out who took the videos. So if the videos were not taken, nobody would have known that such an embarrassing thing happened at the seat of government. This didn't happen at Kantamanto or Makwala or on the street of Accra. It happened where the president is. Is there anything that is more embarrassing and disgraceful? So if you ask me, it is much ado about nothing. Right. Nothing will come out of this except the political will. We already have those laws in our statutes. Enforce them, Mr. Do little and do nothing.
I would respectfully have you retract that. We did not
describe Prof. Mills.
I was about to mention when it happened to Professor Mills of blessed memory. We did not like it.
I am not going.
Your side did not support it. You should not come here.
I am not going. I am not going. Listen, I am not going to retract anything. In fact, he is not doing. He himself, President Nanado.
I know.
Describe President.
I am fully aware of that. But do two wrongs make a right?
What do two wrongs make a right? Is it a breach of any law in this?
No, it isn't.
Is it?
But for the sake of decorum.
What decorum?
Courtesy. I feel we shouldn't be.
No, what decorum?
What decorum? Invectives, if you like.
No, tell me what decorum. What is so bad about the statement I made that he do about nothing?
So let me ask you.
Do little. In fact, do nothing.
Let me ask you.
Yes.
If someone referred to you or the leader of your party in the same light, would you be happy?
They described the entire...
No, the question is, would you be happy?
Hold on. They described the entire NDC as thieves on your program, on Joy. On Joy FM, they said the entire NDC were a bunch of thieves. You guys didn't do that. And I'm saying the very person who is the president today described Prof. Mills, that professor, do nothing. And I said today he's the president, a do-nothing president. You tell me I should withdraw. I am not withdrawing anything. I am not. When he said that he never breached any law, he never breached it. And you see, the difference is that statement came from the leader of opposition at that time. This statement is just coming from Mia Mutala.
You say Mia Mutala?
Oh, yes.
You are a lawmaker.
As compared to the president. As compared
to the leader. Lawmaker. You want to set good example.
As compared to the leader. Hold on. As compared to the leader of the opposition. But you see, if you feel so uncomfortable.
So are you going to retract or not?
Let's say if you feel so uncomfortable about this harmless statement I have made and the purposes of your viewing public, I withdraw it unreservedly. But I'm saying that the hypocrisy that you guys journalists have demonstrated is just unacceptable. I'm saying that those unprintable words were made on your program. They described the NDC as thieves. They described all of us as thieves. Mr. Nanado then described Prof. Mills as Professor Do Nothing. The reason why I have withdrawn this statement is not about multimedia, but it's about some of your viewing public. Left with multimedia, I would have doubled down.
Well, it is unfortunate, but it is fortunate.
Why is it unfortunate?
It is fortunate that you have retracted. But my point, the only point I will make is, of course, I was not sitting wherever when.
It doesn't matter.
But the point to be made is that if it was not good then, it is not good now. And we should not. I think that I remember very well when it was addressed to Mills. I remember even those infamous comments about a chimpanzee and all of that. If it wasn't good then, it isn't good now. But let's move on from there.
Egg them on.
Speaking of, I don't know about egging them on, but speaking of the law, we've spoken about the national, security strategy, but focusing again on the law. And speaking of ministers designate, George Mekuduka has been speaking now in recent times, lands and natural resources. And he has said that the burning of excavators, which your party, for example, has condemned in certain quarters. Some of you are in support of it, others are not. But the point has been made that
some of us.
Oh, I've heard some of you actually. I think the last time was it. There was someone here, a panelist who was together with the member of parliament for Ishiaso, Stephen, and I think he agreed. He consented to it, but. The point to be made is that, by and large, your party, the minority, has not been in favor of the burning of excavators. And you've cited the law to say that this is in breach of the law. George Mekuduka is now saying that, so it was Honorable Suini who actually came, and he was in support of it. But the point to be made is that now George Mekuduka, yes, the burning of excavators. Now George Mekuduka is saying we are going to fashion a law to ensure that we can burn the excavators. That is the position of government. Government is unrepentant, and we're going to follow through on that. And he ends by saying that extraordinary situations require extraordinary measures. Your take?
Well, I'll be very shocked if Honorable Suhino will stoop that low.
You'll be very shocked if Honorable Suhino will stoop that low, simply by adopting the position that the excavator should be burnt. Isn't he entitled to his opinion?
No, Honorable Suhino, I know him. He's my brother. And I know how principled he is. And I know he's one of the guys who would defend the constitutions and the laws of this country. So that's what I'm saying. I didn't listen to, maybe accept that.
I interacted with them, so I would
out of context. I'll be very, very surprised if he says so. You see, this statement made by my good friend Duka, by the way, he beat the guy at the Flagstaff House. Was it not Duka, my good friend? What's the name of the gentleman who was caught on tape? The gentleman who was caught on Anas's tape for taking bribe in the name.
You mean Bissu? Charles Bissu?
It was Duka who beat him mercilessly. What happened to that case? Or it was a matter of dog bite dog. The law doesn't work. It's the same thing. I mean, this statement my good friend Duka made, he'll be unhappy with me this morning. It's an admission that what this government is doing is a violation of the law. What he just said, the fact that he's advocating for some amendments, of the law to give government the license or the carte blanche to ban those excavators is an admission that this government has been engaged in an illegality. The shocking aspect of it is that when you have a minister for defense who encourage a breach or breaching of the laws of this country, and the president, who should be the first person to be defending the laws of this country, came out and said, I support the violations of those laws. If you have any problem, go to court. I was shocked that the Ghana Bar Association didn't say anything about it. But you see, are you surprised? Even in this country, you have a person who was being prosecuted by a court of competent, in fact, who was being tried by a court of competent jurisdiction. President Nanado truncated the court proceedings and took the woman out of this country. And I'm making reference to Aisha 1. Yet the Ghana Bar Association, the Judicial Council, the Chief Justice didn't see anything wrong with that. He didn't consider that to be an attack on the judiciary, that you have a precedent who someone is being tried by a court of competent jurisdiction. Aisha 1, the president, abruptly truncated the court proceedings and took the woman out of this.
You feel the mere fact that that was done, the mere fact that the judiciary did not respond as it is responding now, it implies that they were indifferent, they totally did not care about
deliberately,
it.
Oh, why? They can't tell us they didn't hear. That was an attack of the judiciary. And there has never been any attack on the judiciary under the Fourth Republic than we experienced in that circumstance. that a court of competent jurisdiction, mind you, either a high court or circuit court, whoever judge is sitting on the case, is sitting on the case for and on behalf of the Chief Justice, isn't it?
Yeah.
That the president decides that because of some money we are getting from China, courtesy the senior minister, stopped the proceedings and took the...
Those were not reasons cited.
Oh, when they went to America...
No, but I'm just saying that those were not reasons cited. The way you are putting them, it's as though it was acted in that light.
No, they were.
It is not exactly what
they were.
Saying.
When the president traveled to America, I think in Denver, with the senior minister, and they asked the president why Asha Wan was taken out of this country. The senior minister explained... Hold on. The senior minister's explanation was that, what are we going to gain from prosecuting? We are getting some money, about 3 billion from China. The president didn't tell the senior minister on that platform that that was not the reason. So why would you sit here and tell me that those were not the reasons? There can't be any explanation. The only explanation we got from the senior minister and at a forum that the president was present was this. So that was the reason. My point is that this was an attack on the judiciary. You people didn't say anything. The Chief Justice didn't see the need. The so-called, protectors and pace setters of the Ghanaian democracy, rule of law, nobody said anything. Now, what I'm simply saying is that all those things that happened, why wouldn't the president feel very free to once again ask the minister, direct the minister for defense, to ask the security agencies to violate the laws of this country? Now, the president says that if you are uncomfortable with it, go to court. Is that like you telling people, go out and rob? Come to multimedia, armed robbers, rob multimedia. If multimedia is unhappy with it, they can go to court. I mean, that for me was the lowest, of our political and democratic growth as a people. The first person, the most important person in the protection and the defense of the constitution of this country should be the president. The president encouraged that. So what Duka, my good friend, is saying is an admission that what they did was wrong, because if he considered that not to be wrong, he wouldn't be advocating for an amendment of the existing laws. Now, if he's saying that amend those laws and ensure that we ban those excavators. Now,
you find that to be an admission that what they've been doing thus far
is there any other explanation than an admission that what they did was wrong? Tell me.
But in matters of national interest, I mean, this is a bit of a stretch. In Nigeria, you know of the Twitter ban, and they've extended it to say, well, it's a matter of national interest. We feel some things are not going well, that the platform is being used for different things. That is a Nigerian situation. But I'm saying that in matters of national interest, as you are aware, under certain circumstances, like we've seen with COVID, certain things can be done even, I wouldn't say retrospectively, but in anticipation of certain laws to be brought to bear. Is that not the case? That is the case.
In matters of national interest, there have been a lot of armed robbery in this country. So anytime you get a suspected armed robber, kill him. Is that the logic?
Isn't that a bit of a stretch?
Oh, this one is not a bit of a stretch. This one, you have existing laws. Those laws says that when you confiscate, mind you, by the time they enacted the laws, I think in 2005, Mr. Nanado was in Parliament. The current president was in Parliament. He participated in enacting those laws. And he's a lawyer of long years of standing. And I believe that his input would have been factored into. And mind you, when he was in Parliament...
Just briefly. We also know that the law is meant to be progressive, that the law isn't meant to be static, just as the Constitution is not meant to be static. And so we know that all of these should reflect the needs, the aspirations of the people at a particular time. You're aware of that?
What has logic gone this morning? You are telling me the laws are supposed to be progressive. They are not supposed to be static. Absolutely agreed. But when society progresses and the laws that you have, that you don't want them to be static, you do what? You amend them. Have we amended those?
Which is what Duka is proposing.
So you took an action, violated those laws. And that's why I said it's an admission that what they did was wrong. It's an admission that both the president and the minister for defense and the military violated the laws of the land.
Are you in support of what Duka is saying now?
I am absolutely against it. Look, those who enacted the laws, and by the way, the current president participated in it because he was in Parliament at the time. Now, those who enacted the laws were conscious of the effect. The law says, when you see such, One, those you arrested with the equipment, prosecute them. When you prosecute them and it is established that they were engaged in wrongful acts, what happens? You jail or you fine? And that when you seize them, hand them to the police. Now, after the determination of the case, and those people are convicted or found guilty, you release the equipment to the appropriate ministry or agency. Now, clearly stated in the act. Now, the president instructed the minister for defense, you people can go to town, violate those laws. The president comes out, instead of him saying that, oh, I will look into it, I am not in support of it. The president says, I support it. If you are not happy, go to court. I mean, are we in a banana republic? There is no any other explanation to what my good friend Duka said when he appeared before the appointment committee, but an admission that yes, we have been engaged in violations of law. And that's why I tied it with what happened to Asha 1, that there was a clear violation of the laws of this country, disrespect to the judiciary system and the court proceedings in this country. The Chief Justice and the judiciary didn't see anything wrong with that. It was Nanado, so he can carry on. The Ghana Bar Association, which by the way issued a statement when the MPP won elections in 2000, that henceforth they were no longer going to engage in political discussions. But when the NDC came back to power, they reversed the decision. I mean, how honest and how independent and how fair are this group of people? Now, when those things happened, that was the beginning of an attack on the judiciary of this country. Nothing was seen. Nobody saw anything wrong with that. Why wouldn't they engage in this? So I'm saying that it is extremely worrying. And I am totally against the destruction. Now, you know why? They destroy, but they don't prosecute those who are engaged in it. And what is the guarantee that destroying those equipments alone would stop them from engaging in those acts? That is why the framers of, in fact, those who enacted those acts, says that prosecute them. How many of the people have been prosecuted? How many? They don't prosecute them. They seize the equipment. They ban the equipment.
So you think this new bit about creating a law that allows for the burning of the excavators is neither here nor there? It wouldn't solve any problem. It's
absolutely balderdash. Okay. And let me make this point. The reason government gave for the destruction of the excavators, one of the reasons, at least, let me be very fair, which resonated in almost all government communicators, was that when they seize them, the people find a way of getting those equipments again. Was that not what they told us? That is an irresponsible position. Okay. Now, whose duty is it that when you seize them, the people from whom you seize those equipments don't get them again? Whose duty? Is it not the government?
It is. And that argument has been made. But something else that George Meku Duka told the Appointments Committee was that, as far as he was concerned, you know, the question has also been raised about some of the resources, apart from excavators. When you go to some of these illegal mining sites, those who are polluting our water bodies and the rest, do you not find any gold resources and the rest? That question was raised, and he said that as far as he was concerned, there was no such cache of whatever that had been taken in addition to any excavators. Your minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, has been taking on that issue. What do you feel in that respect? Is there something that is being hidden? Do you feel there is something nefarious happening in this operation, even as we tackle Galamsey?
Kennedy Japan sat on national television and made an emphatic statement that the military, the task force, seized several kilos of gold, ounces of gold. It was Kennedy Japan. The video, I believe that you have seen the video. And this statement was not coming from anybody than a leading member of this MPP and this government, and in fact a member of parliament. Where is the gold? And you know what he said? He said that the president, and if you watch the video, he was speaking directly to the president, that the president should ask them the whereabouts of the gold. Not only he. You have another NPP communicator. Is it Abronya something?
Abronya DC.
Abronya DC, who also sat on national television and retreated same. So I'm saying that, it's clear that this is the most dishonest government ever in our history. But you see, it is not just about seizing those things and stopping them. Now who calls them? Charles Bissiou is still at the Flagstaff House, isn't it? We were in this country when my senior sister, Ajia Alima Mahama, and courtesy Joy TV, I watch it on your program. I don't think that you guys can deny that that didn't happen. When he met the MMDCs and said that we know those of you who are engaged in Galamsey will come after you. Why didn't you guys follow up to find out those who are engaged in the Galamsey? As we see today, you have the MPP Ashanti Regional Chairman who sat on national television and put bars of gold, and said that apart from the Asante Hine, nobody has gold than him in Asante. Nothing happens. So it is business as usual. It is business as usual. So I was flabbergasted, honestly, to hear my good friend claimed that they didn't find anything. Why haven't they asked Kennedy Japan? Aren't they interested in finding out which of the military men were holding the gold? Why aren't they interested in that? Your own Erasmus, is it Erasmus? Asaridonko at Love FM. Was he not beaten when he was doing an investigative journalism? If the president wants to know, members of the MPP who are engaged in it, I think that they should have 30 minutes discussion with. So that was Erastus.
But let me
discussions with him.
In the next few minutes, let's discourse also on something else that, apart from Galamsey, has also, in the energy space, has got a lot of attention. It has to do with the PDS deal. And it's all about the deputy minister's designate, Andre Japamesa. Well, there's even the concern about approving him now, which has come up because of certain ties. But there is the bit about the PDS deal. He says it is not fraudulent, contrary to what John Peter Amewo, the former energy minister, had said. He has cited, the bit about the sums of money. And you, the minority, you have been demanding that the PDS releases to ECG a sum of $200 million. There is also the bit about, the PDS suing government over this entire bit. First of all, what do you make of the entire PDS situation? The sums of money that were taken within the period that the outfit was in office before the ECG took over again. What do you feel should happen to that? And especially in respect of the minister-designate, Andre Japamesa, do you feel some of these reasons that have been cited by the minority side, his ties, prevent him from becoming Deputy Minister for Energy? What is your take?
Well, there's a proverb in Dagbani, and with all apologies to your viewing public.
I hope it's not going to scandalize.
No, it's a proverb. proverbs are not, they don't necessarily reflect. It's just the wisdom you get in it. That when you sleep, that you can't sleep with an itching anus and do not expect to wake up with smelling fingers. So if you sleep with itching anus, you are bound to wake up with smelling fingers. Confusion. The center can no longer hold in this government. You have a sitting minister of state in charge of a ministry who claimed that a particular deal was fraudulent. And then you have a deputy designate who is coming to that ministry who says that no, it is not fraudulent. I think that they should be explaining to us who is speaking the truth, whether the PDS was fraudulent or it wasn't fraudulent. I will leave that to your viewing public. But one thing that is critical for myself and you is that in 2016, and I don't want to go into history because we don't have my time. I could have talked about the ENI, I could have talked about the ESLA, what President Muhammad did and others. But I want to zero it to ECG, and for which reason this PDS, and the fact that their monies that belongs to the state, is locked in a private accounts, more or less, that we cannot access that money. In 2016, as a result of good management of the power sector, ECG made a profit of 725 million. 725 million. Gridco made a profit of 69 million. Netco, who used to make huge losses, only made a loss of 1.39 million. That was in 2016. When MPP came to power in 2017, ECG didn't even maintain the profit they made. They didn't even reduce the profit. They made a loss of 521 million. 521 million. Gridco made a loss of 31 million. And Netco made a loss of 10 million. But let me tell you, 2018, the loss that ECG made was 212 million. Netco made a loss of 203 million. As we sit today, the ECG debt is over 4 billion. ESLA, we don't know what has happened. They instead used about 4 billion of the money for bonds. So there are justifiable reasons why the minority demands that those monies be paid to ECG.
200 million cedis.
Yes, justifiable reason. Because look, if they are making a loss, it will be like a drop in an ocean. But whatever the case is, it will do a lot. We are not being told. This is the most intransparent. Is it an or in? Correct me.
Maybe you could say non-transparent.
So non-transparent, the most non-transparent, government that we have ever had. The sad aspect of it is that you guys have lost your energy, the media. To be very honest,
I bet we haven't.
No, you have.
I can assure you that we haven't.
Your own journalist, what has happened to him? Are you guys talking about it? So please, you have. You should be demanding, because you see, you and I pay our bills. I buy power. Sometimes you buy about 500 Ghana cedis. It will take you a month. Then you buy power repeatedly. I can tell how much you guys are paying for electricity here. And you can't blame ECG. You can talk about the inefficiencies and ineffectiveness of ECG. But they need the energy. Here is the case, you have a private entity. For me, we shouldn't be demanding only the 200+ million. We should be demanding the interest accrued to that money. We should be demanding.
The 200 million plus.
Yes,
interest.
plus the interest.
Right.
We should be demanding. And I believe that if you want to work out the interest, you should be getting over 300 million. Yet, we don't have any proper explanation. You have everything they do. Even if a woman has a miscarriage, they say free SHS. Anything, everything they do is free SHS.
Butala Mohammed sharing his thoughts there. Always refreshing to have you in the studio. It's always this way and that, but we get to the bottom of matters.
Refreshing to be engaged with you when you are failing to admit the fact that you guys are now like lame dogs.
We are never lame dogs.
You are.
We are biting.
Well,
and that is the reason you can even be here and be sharing some of the thoughts you're sharing.
The sad thing is
that is part of it.
The sad thing is that all your teeth are missing.
Oh my what?
Your teeth.
All our teeth.
Yeah, missing under this government. You are biting with the gums.
That is not the case. Else we wouldn't be even seeing some of the backlash we faced on the back of some of the things we've done in respect of Galamsey. Have you followed recently what has happened where it said that some media house is even taking on certain things to do with free SHS and targeting? Have you followed that? Obviously, we are biting.
Oh, you are also on the cartoon scenario reality bit of a thing.
Thank you very much, Butala Mohammed. He always wants to take. But he is Member of Parliament for Tamale Central and also a member of the Public Accounts Committee, also with the Trade Industry and Tourism Committee of Parliament. It's always good to have you. Now, let's stay with the Drive Safe campaign. I made mention of that. We're getting into that shortly. Road accidents have increased despite several campaigns to halt the worrying trend. When we return, we engage major stakeholders who will be walking us through how we got here and how we can get out of this. Do stay with us. We'll be back after the break. Thank you for staying with us, and we talk about something that is really affecting all of us, the state of road accidents. And it's all about the Drive Safe campaign. Road accidents have been increasing despite several campaigns to halt the worrying trend. And that's why we have our guest who will be joining me for a discussion this morning. But right before we do that, let's delve into the real picture when it comes to the road accident situation. If you look at it, we have so far seen some 1,250 people who have died from January to the ended month of May. In less than 6 months, that is 5 months actually. That's the number right there, 1,250 people who have actually lost their lives. Then you look at the representation, and this actually represents a 26.32% rise from last year's statistics. So year on year, you would realize that we are not making the progress we seek. And the question is why? My guests will be answering that shortly. We also note that 1,309 persons have been injured in May 2021 alone. Note that is just 1 month we're speaking of, representing a 26.7% rise. And maybe finally, to paint the picture, 538 people have died from motorcycle accidents since January. That's the number to take stock of, 538, while 2,089 people have been injured through motorcycle accidents. That is the real state of, the road traffic situation, the accidents we've been facing in this country. And the question remains how we can resolve the situation. That is why we have joining us in the studio this morning our guest, Engineer David Adonting, Director of Planning and Programs with the National Road Safety Authority. We also have Superintendent Alex Obing, who is Head of Education, Research and Training with the Ghana Police MTTD. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning.
Let me start with you, Supo, and I'll start from this end. It has been a very gory picture as far as this year is concerned and road accidents. I was just reading of this one recently, and I'll draw your attention to it. It's not something I believe you have missed. So there has been a recent accident including of 3 people dying, including a 2-year-old girl who were killed in an accident at Soko on the Titrim-Buaman Motor Road in the Efija-Kwabre North of district of the Ashanti region. 6 others are receiving treatment and all of that. And the commander of the MTTD in the Ashanti region has been responding. That has been the tale. This is one of the most recent ones we have seen. Of all the efforts, the campaigns and everything, we seem to be making no strides. Why is that?
I think thank you for opportunity offered.
If you could speak up a bit, Supo.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity offered. And good morning to you too. I think there's hope.
There's hope.
We have majority on our side. And it is also obvious that as human beings and as a society, we have myriad of challenges, and one of such is this road safety problem that is confronting us under discussion this morning. And I'm hopeful because it is at the front burner of media houses, and these are being discussed with the view that it will be within the horizon and people will be aware, and that is where solutions are preferred and perplexing issues solved. And in the past, road safety was not a fanciful thing to anybody, but currently we have series of interventions, including recent past, and it's also ongoing, Arrive Alive, and the one that we are talking about now, among other countermeasures. That some are physical, some are other projects that seeks to advocate, that seeks to inculcate best practices to change behavior of road users to improve safety. And it is also telling us that there are certain mistakes that as a country we have made, and moving on with what is confronting us, we will not repeat such mistakes. Because
what are some of those mistakes?
Yeah, it's obvious. For example, all the time, if you look at Ghana, for example, Ghana has been accused internationally, locally, that there seems to be laxity among the state agencies, and in particular, certain interventions that the state needs to bring about in terms of deploying certain investment deliverables. For example, how long since 1957 that we will continue to have single carriages on our transit routes in these jurisdictions. And we look at it, and in recent time, it's confronting us that from here to Kumasi, for example, because it's contraflow route or single carriage, traffic congestion has been a diurnal challenge to motorists, to the extent that around the clock, you observe that there's heavy traffic on many sections of this N6 from Accra to Kumasi than on Accra busy roads. And no wonder you see a lot of people driving on the shoulders and creating problem, head-on collision here and there. And that is a typical of how can you sit down for about 60 years? We will look at this road that is feeding the economy, that is ensuring socio-economic development of this country and West Africa.
So that's a failure right there.
That is obvious. And therefore, when you begin to see a country quickly rising up and saying, oh, I've awarded a contract for the dualization of the road from Accra to Aflao, for example, from Accra to Winneba, and then from Accra to Kumasi, we are dualizing it. It tells you of the laxity that existed, and all of a sudden you are working from a slumber. And that itself comes with a price.
Right, and that is part of the price we are seeing now. We are paying.
We're going to see, and apart from the laxity on the side, there are also that we keep on talking about, which is tried when you are looking at road safety issues in the world. The human challenges, the frailty of man that manifests itself in the way that when you look at the data of road crash and you make attribution, you observe that you can only attribute maybe 4% to vehicle and road. The rest, you are looking at the human behavior that fights against safe practices that the law seeks to regulate, including unsafe use of vehicles, unsafe use of our road, unsafe deployment of vehicles on our roads, and all these manifest itself in speeding and long collusion, driving
So you've identified some of the problems, and as we have this discussion, we'll also have to identify some of the solutions. We're not here to regurgitate the, the solutions.
Within the
problems
that are, it communicates clearly the countermeasures.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about.
It does, and we'll get to that briefly. Engineer Adonting, thank you for joining the conversation as well. As Supo spoke, he made mention of two things that I kept in mind, that people are becoming more aware of the situation in terms of the road carnage, and that we are talking about it like we're doing this morning on the show. But people have become aware, and we've kept speaking about it, but the numbers keep going up in terms of road accident statistics, the casualty statistics, the injury statistics. You just saw me on the board.
Yes.
You know, it's moving from bad to worse. Look at the situation when it comes to motorcycle accidents, month on month. Looking at that, we're not making a headway. Why is that? From the standpoint of the National Road Safety Authority and beyond, why are we not making a headway?
Yeah, good morning, and thank you very much for this opportunity. I must say that anytime I come into contact with multimedia, all of you, I say thank you once again because of the Arrive Alive and now the Drive Safe campaign together. We are making a lot of headway in road safety, particularly, as you said, we are achieving a certain aim. The aim is that you have a lot more people talking about safety now. Previously, you hardly come across, it's either politics or something else. But now you see road safety in the limelight. At the forefront, we are all speaking about it. Perhaps negatively, because the statistics are going up. But let us say that without what you and I are doing, the police is doing, and all the other stakeholders, the situation would have been worse. Because the challenges confronting every country, not only in Ghana, across the world, road safety is a big issue, it's a very complex issue, to the extent that globally, it used to be 1.25 million people dying averagely annually. Now it's hitting 1.35 million, which means that the whole world it's even confronted with that challenge. But we have all come very far discussing the problems. And I like it when we meet and say, now going forward, what do we do? We have identified all the problems. He just said it. One is about the indiscipline. Indeed, the underlying principle is the number of vehicles that are rising. Now Ghana is hitting far beyond the limits of 2.2 million vehicles across the country, running every day. The population is also growing, about 30 million, and very soon there's going to be a population census. And I can bet you that it will be more than 30 million.
Very quickly, do you think that is a problem? I ask from the standpoint of, I mean, you go to the likes of Brazil, you go to some of the Sao Paulo, Rio, and the traffic can be, I mean, you can be in it for hours. Why aren't we addressing the situation? Because in other countries, jurisdictions, even here,
that's what I'm coming.
Burkina Faso,
that's what I'm coming.
Motorbikes, bicycles, and all of that. We don't have that.
Now, in spite of identifying the problems, now having the forefront discussing it, it is one thing doing that, and the other thing is doing. The word is doing, acting. It won't come by miracle or by magic. For road safety, there has to be interventions. If you intervene, then the intervention will inure on the benefits of safety. There are 4 ways that we always say that when it comes to road safety management, we can put together to make sure that we get the kind of safety we want. The advocacy is high in Ghana. I can completely and confidently say that we're on top when it comes to advocacy, education, and so on. But the other complementary efforts, he just said it, road infrastructure. What is it? It is quite recently that we saw that I think the Ministry of Roads and Highways is scaling up, coming up with some dualization programs. Well, it's been too long. We should have gone very far.
As much as I agree with you, and it's true because you're riding on a rough road with a lot of potholes and the rest.
And you expect safety?
The propensity for accidents is high. But there's also been that horrifying statistic where in some roads that have been well tarred, asphalted, and the rest. So there are still accidents there. I think is it the Kintampo Strait?
So you see that as well. Even if the roads are provided, then it is up to us, the individuals. So should now comply with the rules and regulations as provided by the law. So we are talking about the indiscipline. The level of indiscipline in Ghana is growing. And so when you see figures like this, don't be overwhelmed. Go and see on our highways how people are behaving. People would want to speed as if they are flying. They want to overtake 10 vehicles in front of them. Is it perhaps one would say it's not their fault because that is what they see. But even if our roads are single carriageways, like he's saying, we are the human beings. We should know better. We should know what is risky and don't get ourselves into that risk. And so as individuals, if we are not responsible and we do not want to take that opportunity of National Road Safety Authority, the police and the rest talking to you and advising you, and you go and do your own thing disregarding the rules and the regulations, these are the things you see. So I am saying that we have to be responsible as individuals. Whoever happens
how do we bring about that responsibility apart from some of what
once we have spoken about the education, the advocacy, then it tells on my good friends, the police, to be out there. So that whoever becomes recalcitrant, as we advise, as we teach, as we direct you, and you fail to comply with the rules and the regulations, then you must be punished. And this is where I expect my good friends to come in with all modern ways of apprehending, identifying traffic offenders and dealing with them. Because that is where we are now. It is the duty of the police now to go out there and wage war against indiscipline. And I think this is the time. Whatever means police can do, use every gadget. And now it's even ICT across the world. You don't find police going to stand one-on-one on the sun and apprehend traffic offenders. You can't. Because the kind of vehicles people are using now, the Hondas and the Volvos and so on, the Jeeps and so on, you cannot chase them. It takes technology, cameras, to identify them and apprehend them and deal with them.
Very few of our traffic areas or major areas actually are fitted with those. But let me come back to you, Supo. And it's interesting, maybe this goes to both of you because from the National Road Safety Authority standpoint as well, you feed in. I've noticed that especially with, guidance on the lights, the street signals, green meaning go, red meaning stop, and of course, amber. My focus is on amber because a lot of the time people feel it's amber, I can still go through. But if you look at the timing, I don't know whether it's a second or two between amber and red. And I've also come to notice that quite a lot of the accidents we are seeing, you'd see that people are trying to go through the amber light. I've witnessed one before, horrifying accidents with about 3 vehicles involved. What is the teaching? What are we doing when it comes to speaking to people about the fact that when it's amber, you actually need to be getting ready to stop, unless you are going at a certain speed that you cannot stop, which wouldn't be warranted anyway. What do you feel we should be doing in that?
I think that people should take a cue. If they haven't watched, they should rush to Kwame Boateng's Crashed documentary. And adequate information, evidence-based, real-time incidents on our roads in Ghana were captured with police cameras. We were stored and were given out for him to run that documentary, to bring it to the homes of Ghanaians to know that, or as Road Safety Authority have been talking about, as we were taught, one hazardous areas on our road is junction, whether it is crossroad and Y junction, T junction, and whether it is signalized with traffic lights, amber, green and red, or not. It is one of the most dangerous places that drivers in the process of acquiring their license are also taught. And we expect that there will be self-compliance, because most of the crashes that are happening at those junctions, particularly in police-urban jurisdiction. And it's the reason why in the road law we look at regulation 106, rules of the road. Apart from the fact that we are regulated to drive on the right side, on our town roads, we are expected not to move above, in certain places, 50 kilometers per hour, and other places, below 30 kilometers per hour.
And part of the problem would be that in some of these locations, we don't even have the proper signages to guide people. That is part of the problem.
And I'm coming to that we are instructed, and a license holder, and I'm reading this one together with regulation 163, general speed behavior that are inculcated in drivers, that when you get to where places are built up with buildings, where people live, it can be city, it can be town, it can be hamlet, it can be cottage. So far as there are these landmarks, constructed artifacts, it is incumbent on the driver to slow to these speeds, in these areas, whether the signs are posted or not. The sign that you expect to see are people living there, and every driver is aware of this. And it's same on city roads, but what do we see? We are instructed that when you're approaching these places, slow down, particularly at junctions too, and more so in these city town road junctions. There are signals, and we expect driver to stop when it is amber. Please listen. When it is amber or when it is red. But what we are seeing, I think it's becoming a global attitude among drivers. That anytime you see amber, and then it tells them to speed, they're supposed to stop. And that's the problem we have, that now people are rushing to cross amber lights. And that is one of the most dangerous behavior every driver must prevent him or herself from. And so I'll use this opportunity to admonish all drivers that apart from the fact that police is about to deploy red light, cameras to detect those infractions, for now, before then, we have to admonish, because many of the crashes, associated deaths and injuries at these junctions as a result of drivers who run the stop line, the amber, and rushed through and crashed, and in the process we have been observing a lot of deaths. So among these include motorcycle riders.
That is the real situation. In a minute each, as we wrap this conversation, I'll come back to you for your wrap-up comments, Supo, especially as we proffer solutions. Let's start from the MTTD. What is your plan for the month of June, your plan of action, so to speak, to prevent a repeat of what we saw in May? Very quickly, in a minute.
I think that we have deployed reactive teams and on Accra streets and
are there specific areas you're targeting?
Oh, we're targeting those, for example, who are driving, facing oncoming vehicle with what do you call hazards, and also with sirens or unauthorized use of siren and all that, and generally indiscipline and motorcycle. And we are looking at almost all roads, particularly roads that receive such infractions, including the airport bypass. We're looking at the Gifford Road. We will be on many other roads that we're beginning to see. And then, of course, since last week, we have been on the N6, particularly between at Insutem. Okay. We have been at the barrier, the new Sutem, the custom barrier, and we have also been at the Palace rest stop, and then Osino, and then Enyinam, and Paradise, Enyinam, and other. Why? Because drivers are manifesting intolerance attitude and driving facing oncoming vehicles and driving on the shoulder on the highway. And so we have deployed to our thief, and we are there, and as many as we are arresting, we are pushing them to the courts. Right. Clearly, we have deployed this reactive kind of method. We expect, with the support with the other media partners, and then we also scaling up our war on indiscipline. Okay. And so a lot are up there for all of us. What is important is that in doing all this, it takes a self-compliant road users to let police have its peace and to deploy safety services.
Yes, I think I'm happy to hear, yeah, my good friend talking about war against indiscipline. That's fantastic. More like reactivating what you did earlier before, and also bringing in cameras. So that will come and complement our efforts. Two things that we are doing. Media engagement under the Arrive Alive is going to go on, and we're even going to scale it up. This time we're going to work with about more than 200 of media stations across the country. So it's going to be massive, massive campaign. Then also now we have deployed our men. We have recruited about 200 personnel, and we are at lorry parks. And so we are doing what we call pre-departure checks. We are assessing the fitness of drivers before you move out of the station. We are testing the fitness of the vehicle itself, checking everything around the vehicle to pass it before it moves. We are also enforcing the 2-driver long-distance journey policy, which is also working perfectly. And I think that these two things we're doing, together with the support from the police, I think the narrative will change in this particular month.
Let's pray for that in the month of June. Those who joined us for the conversation, Engineer David Adonting, Director of Planning and Programs at the National Road Safety Authority, and Superintendent Alex Obeng, of course, who is Head of Education, Research and Training at the MTTD. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. We take a breather here. When we return, there's more action on the AM show. Do stay. Welcome back on the AM show, and we're talking about trade facilitation and more. And joining the conversation, Raymond Amaglo, Director of Operations, Ghana Link Network Services Limited. And interestingly, right before we got into this, I found out, Raymond, that he's an old student, a product of my alma mater, Bishop Herman. And it appears to be just a year between us, but don't mention it. We don't want them to know. But thank you so much for joining the conversation. So before we go into, ICOMS, Ghana Link, what the successes you've chalked in recent times, what exactly have you been up to within, let's say, this year?
Thank you very much, Benjamin. This year has been quite a momentous year for us as a company. As you may be aware, from the 1st of June last year, we rolled out the new trade facilitation and customs management system, which is popularly known as the ICOMS. And it's been a challenging but interesting period for us. And over the course of this year, we have made very good strides, and we are quite proud of what we have achieved in this relatively short period of time. And we are grateful and thankful to God and to our various stakeholders for all the support up until this time.
How long has your outfit been in operation?
Ghana Link Network Services Limited is a wholly owned Ghanaian company. It was registered on the 5th of June 2001. And we are an IT solutions company. We mostly focus on trade facilitation solutions. So in 2003, we were one of 5 companies which were performing destination inspection services for the government. It may interest you to know, Benjamin, we were the only indigenous company out of the 5. And then in 2015...
The only indigenous company?
Wow. Yes. In 2015, our contract was over with the government, but we got another contract to provide external verification services for the Customs Division of GRA. This we did together with our technical partners from Japan, OMIC. Then in 2018, the government sought to get a single service provider to provide an end-to-end solution to our trade facilitation program. And Ghana Link was selected, and together with our technical partners from this time Korea, which is the Korea Customs Service, we are working with an agency of the Korea Customs Service, which is the Customs Unipass International Agency, KUPIA. They have developed this system, popularly known as the Unipass system. That's what they're using in Korea and in some other countries across the world, including Africa.
So it appears within this short period, your impact has really been felt, and you've been engaging, the powers that be, government, to ensure that the rollouts are indeed what they ought to be. But what would be your appreciation? How do you feel so far? Because as far as ICOMS is concerned, there have been the pros and cons and the people who have been for and against. What is your view of that integrated system?
Overall, the feedback we have gotten from the stakeholders is that this is indeed a very good system. The conviction is that it is the best that has been deployed since we became a republic. The main goal or the objective of bringing on board ICOMS was, one, to get a single service provider to perform an end-to-end function with regards to our trade facilitation function at the ports. And then secondly, there has been this challenge with revenue mobilization at the port. So the government needed a system that was robust enough to help shore up our revenue mobilization at the port. And thirdly, most importantly, for trade facilitation, which would effectively bring about a reduction in the cost and time of doing business for our business public. And to a very large extent, Unipass or ICOMS has performed this creditably within this 1-year period.
Okay, so as far as ICOMS is concerned, and of course raising revenue and all of that, training for stakeholders is paramount because they must know exactly what this is about. But there's also been the question about some people not receiving the requisite training. What is being done about that?
Yes, we had a bit of a challenge at the initial stages of the rollout. Not all stakeholders appreciated what it was that the government was bringing on board. And Benjamin, change is not an easy thing for any of us. So people were, to some extent, also not ready for the change. It affected our ability to provide adequate training. So at the commencement of the system, we had quite a challenge at the ports, as you may recall. Fortunately, with the support of the government and the various stakeholders, we managed to get all stakeholders on board. We provided continuous training, which we even continue to do. As I speak to you today, there are training programs for various stakeholders, various parts of the country. So we continuously are providing in-person training, virtual trainings, and we have also provided manuals and then videos of our processes on our website, external.unipassghana.com.
Right.
So I can confidently say that to a very large extent, our stakeholders are very much knowledgeable in how to use the system. Benjamin,
if you say there's a bit more work to be done?
Of course, it's a continuous process. We are constantly engaging our stakeholders, but the good thing is that the system has enabled the creation of a port community,
right,
where all the players across the supply chain are connected to the system. Even those with their individual systems, the systems are talking. So whatever roles are being played by one party are available for view by another party. So effectively, we have what you would call a paperless port system today, because you are able to make your applications to customs with one application. You're able to make application to all the MDAs who are supposed to provide you with certificates, licenses, permits for your imports or exports. You do a one-time application with a one login, and they all receive your application. They provide responses right on the system. Customs does the assessment. They send you a feedback of the bill you're supposed to pay as duties and taxes.
Right.
If you are comfortable, you accept on the system, and then you pay. If you are not, you reject, and then an appeal process starts immediately. But if you accept to make payment, the good thing is that all 23 commercial banks have also been connected to the system through the Ghana.gov platform. So the various payment options available with your bank, you are able to utilize, even including Momo. Right. And then you make payment. The good thing also with ICOMS is that you are with the pre-manifest declaration clearance option, even before the arrival of the ship. Okay, once you have your invoice, your packing list, your bill of lading, you're able to make application to customs. Once you make payment, you wait 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month, whatever period of time the ship arrives, then you have to go to the port to take delivery of your cargo. So clearance at the port, you don't need any paper at the moment. And then within the matter of a day, sometimes hours, you're able to take delivery of your cargo from the port.
So I know there's this new cargo delivery feature that has been brought in, and that is some of what you're talking about. So the importer, the agent, all of them, the process has been simplified.
Very much so. With one login, you're able to perform all your functions, and then you come out, and it's all done on the system. Like I said, the only time you have to physically go to the port is when you have to take physical delivery of your cargo from the port. Otherwise, all the processes are online and it's
paperless.
Very efficient.
Some of these successes have been chalked and touted as far as the paperless system and ICOMS and all of that are concerned. But what would you say have been the real gains in terms of revenue generation? What has been the impact?
It's been quite a significant impact on our revenue generation. Since the deployment of ICOMS June of last year, that is across the country, compared to previous years' collections, we are doing about 30% higher than what was collected previously. There was an interview granted by the Commissioner General where sometime over the weekend, he had mentioned that averagely collections were about 800 to 900 million cedis a month. But since the inception of ICOMS, the government is collecting between 1.3 to 1.4 billion cedis a month. So there's been a significant increase in the revenue collected since the inception of ICOMS. The other advantage is that it has also helped to reduce the cost and the time of doing business. Like I mentioned, within a matter of hours or a day, you're able to clear your goods. So charges like rent charges, the mortgage charges, all those other charges that you would have to pay for delays that you would have encountered, these have all become savings to the trading public. Yeah.
So the single window, the paperless systems, they are all part of the ICOMS that you run?
Very much so. Like very much so. All the various players who have to play various roles are all connected in the system. You make a one-time application, and if it is the Food and Drugs Authority, if it is the Environmental Protection Agency, if it is the Ghana Standards Authority, any authority that needs to, give you a certain approval, with one application, they all receive your application, and then they give you the approvals right online.
Okay.
And then you are able to proceed. Customs does the assessment for you. You make your payment. The next thing you do is to wait for the arrival of the ship. You go to the port, you take physical delivery of your cargo. So it's a paperless system, it's a single system, and it's working very efficiently.
So 2 quick questions for you before we wrap. And the penultimate one is this. I know that in terms of AFTA, it's supposed to open up the continent to us and us to the rest of the continent. And I also know that there is a bit about exporting. So far, since the system has been introduced, I know of Casapreco and Gandol Cosmetics that have benefited from the program. Are there other companies joining the fray? And how is the process being facilitated for other companies to come on board?
The good thing, Benjamin, is that on the 1st of April, when AFTA went live across Africa, Ghana was one of the first countries in Africa to be ready for AFTA. And it is because the system have been provisioned to perform the role. The competent authority is the Customs Division of the GRA, together with the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the Ministry of Trade, these three institutions. So you are able to make your various applications on the system, and then you are good to go, both for your export and your import. I'm also aware that the Ministry of Trade is engaging various manufacturing companies who are into export to help them with a hand-holding exercise to onboard them so that they're able to take full advantage of the AFTAC processes.
And my final bit to you, of course, you have come this far, but moving forward, what are the projections that you're looking forward to? Ghana Link with the ICOMs and, aiding Ghana to arrive at the sort of place we want to be. What next?
Of course, like I mentioned, we are very proud of what we have achieved, but there is still more to do. We have been working very vigorously on some few new models we want to introduce to even enhance and make the service delivery even better and help improve the revenue as well. If I could mention a few of them.
You could. Just make them brief.
Okay, we have one which is the e-auction. Currently, the auction processes are manual mainly. So we are developing this system which will enable an electronic auctioning of unutilized cargo list goods. Let me not go too deep into, but it can be done electronically. There's the e-wallet. Sometimes when you have overpaid your taxes, we are coming up with a system where you are able to select an option where your overpaid amounts could be used to defray current costs and a few more. Hopefully, between the end of this month and the end of the year, we would have deployed some few new models which would even enhance our processes.
Well, it's been refreshing, and I'm sure the education on this should be ongoing so that we get to know a lot more about the system and how we are going paperless and how Ghana Link is facilitating the entire process. But thank you so much for coming through. Raymond Amaglo is actually Director of Operations, Ghana Link Network Services Limited. And we found out we go way back.
Way back.
We even knew.
Way back.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Benjamin. Thank you. Very grateful.
And, well, this is how we draw the curtains on today's show. It's been invigorating. Join us tomorrow as we bring you a lot more action worth waking up for. My name is Benjamin Akakpo. This is the AM Show. Do enjoy the rest of your day.